this. Do you think Ukraine deserves to be a sovereign nation? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't. I don't think so. And what is it? What does that mean, deserve? It was part of Russia for 500 years, even longer. I mean, so the question is not really of sovereignty. It's just it should have been under Russia's sphere of influence. I mean, would they have borders? Would they have their own government? Yeah, I think that at this point, it would be wrong if Ukraine were to totally disappear. But their sovereignty should be as meaningful as Mexico's sovereignty or Canada's sovereignty. The question is not really whether Ukraine has national sovereignty. The question is, which sphere of influence would they be under? Would they be under the sphere of influence of NATO and the United States? Or would they be under the sphere of influence of Moscow and Russia? There's no third option. It's just like a false dichotomy. Like, would Ukraine be absorbed by Russia, or would Ukraine be a free and independent nation? That's not the dichotomy. The dichotomy is, would Ukraine be under Russia's sphere of influence, like Belarus, or would it be under a European Union NATO country, like Poland, like Germany? That was the question. And obviously, it makes more sense that it would be under the sphere of influence of Russia. And you understand that because that is the arrangement of the entire Western Hemisphere. The entire Western Hemisphere is under that arrangement. You don't like what Russia did in Donbass? What do we do in Bay of Pigs? What did we do throughout the Cold War in Argentina and Chile and Nicaragua, in all these countries? You know, so all of a sudden people like to say, oh, their territorial integrity, Ukraine chose, they get to do whatever they want. It's like, no, they don't. They are on the periphery historically and in reality of a great power which is reconstituting itself, or certainly you could say it is one of the great military powers of the world. The idea that that country caught in the middle of that tug of war is going to just get to choose and Russia has to respect the will of those people, it's just insane. Would we allow for Canada to be in a defensive alliance with China? There's no scenario we would ever allow that. Could you imagine if Mexico, which is on the border of the United States and some of our most important cities, would be in a literal defensive alliance, a treaty ally of Russia or China? No, we would not allow that at all. We would rig the elections. We would send in special forces. We would cripple them with sanctions. And if all that failed, we would invade them. Like Russia is invading Ukraine. That is precisely what we would do. There is no scenario where the United States would allow a treaty ally of our arch adversary with missiles forward deployed to be on our border like that, to have that much border that close to our important cities. It would just never happen. It would be inconceivable. And what's more, given that Ukraine is historically part of Russia, that would be like if Alaska were absorbed by Russia. I mean, we would just never entertain something like that, or Texas for that matter. It would just never happen. So, you know, people like Destiny and all these libfags, they say, well, they invaded a sovereign nation. Is Ukraine a country? It's like, sure. But Ukraine is a much smaller country that is in the middle of this great power conflict, like it or not, that has ramifications. So, you know, Belarus and Ukraine should have been treated the same. And so, yeah, it really has very little to do with Ukraine was never going to have sovereignty. It's a question of what security umbrella would they be a part of. And the United States, you know, I mean, it is our foreign policy to contest our adversaries. But, you know, in this case, we bit off more than we could chew, because somebody might say, well, why would we give Russia Ukraine? Why would we give our adversary anything? And I agree with that. If we could get away with it, why wouldn't we try? But we couldn't get away with it. You see, that's the problem. In other words, the United States kept expanding NATO and kept devouring more countries, which means more U.S. bases, more bilateral economic trade agreements, and integration into Europe and fundamentally into the American system. Why would we not consume as much as we can? Why would we not push the frontier of American power as far as possible? I agree with that. And that's what those people thought. They thought nothing will stop NATO. We're going to go to Georgia. We're going to go to Ukraine. We're going to go to Finland. And we're going to have Russia surrounded. And we're just going to take as much as we can. Okay. But Russia drew a red line and said, if you push this far, we're going to push back. We dared them. They pushed back. Now we're losing. And now we found out the hard way, the limitations. We found the hard limit of America's frontier. Because Russia decided to push back and we cannot repel them. We're not capable of repelling them. We're going to lose this one. They're going to take that territory. Russia vetoed our expansion. And this has inaugurated a whole new era in international politics. It's not quite multipolar yet, but this is the high watermark of the unipolar moment because Russia was able to exercise a veto, what was considered not to be a great power for 30 years. You know, from 1991 until 2022, Russia was not considered a great power. It wasn't until they intervened in the Syrian civil war in the latter half of the 2010s that they were even able to project power outside their borders, outside their immediate periphery and their neighbors. And so this was the time when Russia was able to say, no, we're back, and America is now limited in a certain way. So anyway, so it's just sort of like the wrong question. Should Ukraine exist? The question is in what form? And, you know, it was never going to be anything but a part of Russia. Russia just could never allow. I mean, because if Ukraine joined NATO and had national sovereignty, well, then Russia would effectively cease to exist. It's existential. So that's really the problem there. And for anybody that has a problem with that, people like to talk in terms of these abstractions. They say, but what about their sovereignty? But the people voted to join the European Union. We would never accept anything like that. It has to do with security. We would never accept the parallel, the analog in our hemisphere. We just wouldn't. I mean, we wouldn't let Russia put missiles in Cuba. We're not comfortable with them being allied with Cuba and Venezuela today. I mean, we still choke those countries to death. So, because they chose wrong. So that's my opinion on that. It's just the wrong question.